Hi, I'm Linda. 3 days after major surgery, barely able to walk, my mother told me to pack up and leave. Why? Because my sister's bridal shower needed the space. I didn't argue. I bled onto their carpet and they shut the door in my face. They said I was dramatic, ungrateful, invisible, but I started keeping records. And when I found out they gave away my grandmother's veil, erased me from photos, and buried the only person who ever protected me, without telling me, I stopped asking for love and started asking for answers. Now they're begging. But tell me, when your own mother throws you out like clutter, what exactly is left to go back to? I wasn't expecting much from my time back home. I just needed a place to recover, a roof, a quiet corner, a few days to breathe. But 3 days after surgery, I realized how foolish that hope was. The house still smelled like lemon polish and too strong coffee. I'd grown up with that smell. Familiar, yes. Comforting. Not anymore. My mother's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp, clipped, directing someone about napkin colors and floral arrangements. I lay still for a moment, blinking against the morning light seeping through the blinds. My abdomen throbbed with every breath. The stitches tugged when I tried to shift, a cruel reminder that my body was still broken open inside. I wasn't supposed to move much, the doctor said. No lifting, no walking long distances, definitely no stress. But here I was, already stressed out by the scent of wedding prep and the muffled sound of my sister's laughter. Isolde's laughter always had that high, glassy tone, like someone who thought they were better than the room but wanted the room to love her anyway. The door creaked open without a knock. "Mom, I told you," I started. "It's me," she cut in. Verity, standing in the doorway in her favorite beige cashmere set, holding a clipboard and not meeting my eyes. "You need to pack your things." My stomach dropped so fast, I almost forgot the pain. "What?" She stepped inside like it was a routine announcement. "The event team needs to set up in here by tonight. We're transforming this room." "I just had surgery." Her eyes flicked to my midsection, then back to the clipboard. "I know. That's why I gave you 3 days. But Isolde's shower is in 4. We can't have your situation bringing down the mood." My brain scrambled for words, for logic, for decency. "I can't even walk straight yet." She let out a sigh like I was exhausting her. "Linda, you're always so dramatic. You're not dying. Where am I supposed to go?" "There's the garage. We'll put a cot out there for tonight, and you can figure out something else by tomorrow." I stared at her. This was the woman who used to kiss my forehead when I scraped my knee, who made grilled cheese sandwiches when I was sick. Now she wouldn't even let me heal under her roof. "You can't be serious," I said. Then came the words I'll never forget, sharp, smooth, final. "Don't lie there like a patient and ruin your sister's luck." That line didn't just land in my gut, it detonated something old and tired that had been sitting quietly inside me for years. Isolde breezed in a moment later, holding up a mock floral arrangement. "Linda, do you mind not bleeding on anything? The florals are all pastels." She laughed. Mom didn't correct her. They moved on, discussing catering. I sat frozen, breath caught between rage and heartbreak. The sun moved across the room in slow betrayal while I tried to stand. My back protested, the muscles near my stitches screamed. I leaned on the dresser, one foot sliding carefully into a slipper. I packed, not with speed, not with pride, just with the steady hands of someone who'd finally heard the answer to a question she'd been asking since childhood. Do I matter here? No. I moved like a ghost in my own room. My sweatshirt still hung on the doorknob. The nightstand still had the cup Isolde left there for hydration, now filled with dust. My suitcase wheezed open, old and judgmental. I put in underwear, pain meds, a heating pad, my charger. When I bent to grab my toothbrush, I felt a slow burn in my lower belly, and then something warm. Blood. I sat down hard, dizzy, not much but enough to remind me I wasn't healed, and they didn't care. Every step toward the door felt like walking deeper into a memory I never agreed to keep. I passed the living room where Dad used to watch baseball, the kitchen where Mom would press orange slices into my lunch bag. Now she pressed flower petals into centerpieces. I stopped at the threshold. She didn't even glance at me. "Where are you going?" she asked, still scribbling in her planner. "Somewhere I won't be erased." Her pen stopped moving, but she didn't look up. Isolde peeked out from the backyard, already posing with the flower arch. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I hadn't slept much. The cot they moved into the garage was nothing more than a fold-up chair with a blanket thrown over it. No pillow, no apology. Just, "You'll be fine," from Isolde before she walked off like she was tossing a treat to a stray dog. Around 5 in the morning, my back was numb, and the dull ache in my abdomen had turned into a low, pulsing throb. I sat up slowly, letting my feet hit the cold concrete. The garage smelled like old paint and fertilizer. In that quiet hour, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like I'd been buried alive. As I shifted, trying not to tear anything inside me, I remembered something from when we were kids. Picture day at church. I was maybe 9. The photographer told us to group together. I stood beside Isolde, but Mom said, "No, no, Linda, stand behind her. You don't want to block her light." That phrase, "block her light," was like gospel in our house. I never did again. By the time the sun pushed through the cracked garage window, I decided to make my way to the kitchen for something warm. I moved slow, careful not to make noise. The last thing I needed was Verity scolding me for traipsing around like a ghost again. As I passed the dining room, I saw it. A white linen-covered table set up like a display. On it lay the bridal shower photo album, still open from the night before. There were pens nearby, likely for guests to sign love notes, maybe quotes like, "Sisters are forever," or "Family first." I paused. I shouldn't have looked. I already knew better, but I did. Page after page, smiling faces, balloons, backyard candles, mock engagement shoots. Isolde in the center of every frame like she was born with a spotlight above her. And then came the family shots. I remembered that barbecue. I stood beside my cousin, holding a red plastic cup, laughing. It was one of the few photos I actually liked of myself. In the album, that same photo was there, but I wasn't. The crop was clean. My arm was barely visible. The next one, our 4th of July picnic, I was in that one too, or at least, I had been. Now it was a perfectly curated shot of Verity, Dad, Isolde, and some neighbor's baby. No Linda, just air where I had been. I swallowed. My hands were cold. I turned the page again, another one gone, another memory rewritten. When Verity came into the kitchen minutes later, balancing a tray of lemons and fake eucalyptus leaves, I waited. "Nice album," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She didn't even pause. "Oh, thank you. I hired a graphic editor to make it look sharp. Clean lines, modern feel." "I noticed I'm not in a single group photo," I added. This time, she looked at me, briefly. "Well, some of them just looked better that way. You were kind of in the back. It didn't make sense, composition-wise." Composition-wise, like I was clutter. "Don't overthink it," she added, already half turning away. I should have said more, should have shouted, flipped the table, burned the whole thing down, but I didn't. Instead, I walked out to the front porch to get some air. That's when I heard it, Verity's voice, cheerful and rehearsed. "Oh, she's on a little solo retreat," she said to our neighbor Ruthie, who'd stopped by with flowers. "You know Linda, always a bit of a lone wolf, needed some alone time to reflect before things get busy again." I froze behind the porch column. Ruthie chuckled. "Well, I hope she finds whatever she's looking for." Verity didn't miss a beat. "We support her, of course. Healing journeys are important, especially after everything. After everything. What a nice way to sum up being exiled from your own home while bleeding through gauze." I went back to the garage and sat in that metal chair like it was a throne for forgotten people. My journal was tucked into the overnight bag I kept by my feet. I pulled it out, flipped past a dozen unfinished entries, and started a new page. "I've been erased before," I wrote, "but this time they did it with intention and skill." I didn't cry. There weren't tears left. What I had now was something else. Quieter, sharper, resolve. They didn't know it yet, but I was already writing the next chapter. I didn't eat anything that morning. My stomach couldn't hold food. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was the codeine. Or maybe it was knowing that every breath I took under that roof made me feel less like a daughter and more like an inconvenience with a pulse. I'd been up since before the sun, sitting on the edge of the cot in the garage, pulling my hoodie tighter, even though the air was warming up outside. Inside me, though, everything still felt cold. They were going to start decorating around 9 a.m. That gave me an hour. I didn't want to be seen. Not as I was, not dragging a cheap duffel bag full of clothes and bruises, not limping through a house where my pain was treated like a stain on their perfect little setup. I packed slowly, carefully. I rolled up what I could, shoved in what I had the strength to carry. My jeans, a few shirts, my toothbrush still had dried toothpaste on it from yesterday. I wrapped my heating pad in a towel and tucked it against my back as I zipped the bag. By the time I opened the garage door and stepped into the hallway, the lights were already on. The smell of floral cleaner hit first, too sharp, too bright for how my body felt. I tightened my grip on the bag strap. My right side flared with heat as the stitches tugged beneath my skin. I breathed through it. No one was around. I just needed to make it down the hall and out the front door. The bag snagged on the wall once. I bent down to adjust it and instantly regretted the motion. My head spun. I felt a slow slide inside me, not painful, but wrong. I tried to straighten, but my knees gave out. The carpet rushed toward my face, and I landed hard. The world didn't go black. It went beige. The exact beige of that plush new carpet Verity had insisted on for the photo area. My hand pressed into it, and I felt it, wetness spreading under my palm. I turned slightly, saw the crimson bloom against the pale threads. Not a lot, but enough. I pushed myself onto my back, biting my cheek to keep from making a sound. If they saw me like this, they'd think I was trying to make a scene. Even bleeding felt performative in that house. Footsteps. I tensed. Verity's heels clicked in sharp little bursts down the hallway. She came around the corner, holding a clipboard and a coffee cup. We locked eyes. I opened my mouth. I think I need... Maybe I should go to the ER. She looked down at the carpet, then back at me. Her mouth flattened. Her hand tightened on the coffee cup. And then, without saying a word, she turned and walked away. I heard the quiet thunk of the bedroom door clicking shut behind her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I waited. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. The wet spot beneath me cooled. I rolled onto my side, pressing my forearm into the carpet to push myself up. My knees shook as I stood. I left the bag where it was. I'd come back for it. One step, then another. I reached the garage door and leaned against it. The weight of the moment landed harder than the fall. Back on the cot, I sat for a long time, listening to the sounds of movement inside the house. Laughter, a blender whirring. Isolde's voice rising about lighting angles. They've always shut the door, I thought. I just never bled enough for it to show. I pulled my phone from the bag and opened my contacts. My thumb hovered over names I hadn't touched in months, years. Then I scrolled down and tapped one. Marla. The voicemail beeped after 2 rings. Hey, hi, it's me, Linda. Listen, if that guest room's still an option, I think I need to take you up on it. I can be out of here by tonight. Call me back if it's not too late. I'd really appreciate it. I hung up, then stared at the phone. I wasn't even sure what time it was anymore. The day had bent and folded in on itself. I reached down and felt the hem of my shirt, stiff with dried blood. That spot would probably never come out of the carpet, but I hoped they'd try. I hoped they scrubbed until their knees hurt. I laid back down on the cot, facing the ceiling. My stomach ached, but something deeper did too. And it wasn't just the wound that had reopened. I didn't move for hours after leaving the voicemail. The garage stayed quiet, except for the occasional creak from inside the house. Someone walking past, laughing too loud, slamming a cabinet shut without a care. I sat there listening, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of mothballs and resentment. By mid-afternoon, my body had stopped aching from the fall. What remained was something deeper, something that couldn't be reached by a heating pad or ibuprofen. It was the realization that I was done begging to be seen, done trying to contort myself into the kind of daughter they could tolerate. It was still light outside when Marla texted, "Keys are under the frog statue, doors unlocked, come anytime." I stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard, wondering if I should write something back. But what was there to say? Thank you for giving me more kindness in a sentence than my own family had shown in weeks. Instead, I stood. I didn't rush. I gave myself the dignity of moving slowly, of not letting them rush me one last time. Inside the house, everything looked polished and fake. I passed through the kitchen where the fridge still held a dry erase board that read, "Welcome home, Isolde," in sparkly marker. Next to it, a photo of her in a white dress at age 6, beaming. There were no photos of me. At the foot of the stairs sat the wrapped gift I'd sewn with my own hands. A quilt made from scraps of fabric, pieces of old dresses, curtains from the bedroom we used to share, even a square from Dad's old college sweatshirt. I'd started it when I thought this wedding would be something we'd share, something to remind her, remind them, that I had a place in this family too. I hesitated, then carried the quilt into the foyer and placed it on the entry table with a simple note. For Isolde, congratulations. I turned to leave and nearly collided with their voices. They were in the living room. The door was ajar. Seriously, what is this? Isolde's voice cut through the air, shrill. It looks like it belongs in a nursing home. Then Verity. Just toss it. We'll say we never got it. The words sliced through me clean. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I stood there, invisible as always, and absorbed it. I walked into the kitchen, tore a sheet from the notepad near the phone, and wrote my goodbye with a calm I hadn't known I had. To my family, I wish you joy tomorrow. I'll be somewhere quiet, healing. Please don't look for me, unless it's to remember I was here. I left the note under the ceramic fruit bowl. As I walked out the front door, the sky had already begun its shift into twilight. There was a softness to the light that made everything look gentler than it was. Marla's truck pulled into the driveway just as I stepped outside. She didn't say much, just nodded once and reached over to open the passenger door. I slid in, keeping my head low, not out of shame, I just didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me leave like I was being chased out. The ride was quiet, the roads familiar. I watched the houses blur by, houses that had always felt like other people's stories, warm, messy, loud stories that didn't belong to me. Marla's place sat tucked behind a row of overgrown hedges. The guest house was modest, a single-story structure behind her main home, but it looked like sanctuary. Faded blue siding, wind chimes on the porch, and a little potted plant that had definitely seen better days. She parked, turned off the engine, and finally looked at me. "You get the soft pillows," she said. "That's non-negotiable." I laughed. The sound surprised us both. Inside, the air smelled like lavender and old books. The couch was worn in, the rug had a stain in the corner no one had bothered to scrub out, and I loved it all instantly. I dropped my bag by the door and just stood there. "You need anything?" Marla asked from the kitchen. "Just a moment." She nodded and left me alone. I sank into the couch. My body sighed into the cushions like it had finally been given permission to exist. For the first time in weeks, I let myself rest, not because someone gave me permission, but because I claimed it. And when I finally did look back toward the door, I realized something strange. I didn't miss the house. I missed the version of me who used to believe I ever belonged there. I woke up to the scent of coffee I hadn't brewed and a knock that didn't demand anything. Marla was already in the kitchen, humming along to a folk song on the radio, pouring tea into a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Boss." I sat up on the small couch with a stiffness that had nothing to do with the mattress. "Morning," she said, setting the tea on the end table beside me. "I forwarded some mail from your job. It came yesterday." I nodded, reached for the stack, and gave her a grateful smile. No questions, no probing, just space. The envelopes were mostly junk. Discount coupons, a flyer from a dentist I'd never seen. Then I saw the bank logo. My bank. A credit statement. I opened it out of habit, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Halfway through the page, a charge caught my eye. Event Furnishings, Inc., $248.20. I blinked. That was the week I gave Verity money for what she called emergency car repairs. She said she didn't want to dip into the joint fund before the bridal shower. I remember her exact words. "It's not like I'm asking for a handout. I just need a little buffer." I had $700 left in my checking account at the time. My post-surgery prescriptions alone cost over half that. I'd skipped one refill and stretched pain meds by cutting them in halves. I pulled out my phone and stared at her contact for a long moment before tapping call. When it went to voicemail, I didn't hesitate. "Hey, Mom. Hope the chair rentals were worth it. I had to cancel a follow-up appointment because I'm out of cash. Just thought you should know what your buffer cost." I ended the message without waiting for the beep. Marla had stepped out back to water the hydrangeas. I sat alone with the steam rising from my tea, my jaw clenched. Scrolling through Instagram didn't usually tempt me, but I opened it that morning out of morbid curiosity. I hadn't looked at Isolde's page since the eviction. First photo, a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking together. Next, her in a silky white robe, grinning like life had never once said no to her. Then I saw the veil. It was tucked into her hair like an afterthought, lace trailing over her shoulders. Ivory. Delicate. Familiar. I clicked the photo and zoomed in. There it was, at the hem of the veil, almost invisible, but not quite. 2 tiny embroidered initials, LD. My grandmother had hand-stitched them into the corner the year she promised the veil to me. "One day, baby," she whispered, You'll wear this when someone worthy walks you down the aisle." I stared at my initials on a woman who had once told me my taste was too sentimental to be chic. I didn't call. I didn't text. I simply set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. I don't remember when Marla came back in, but I do remember the way she didn't say anything. She just sat on the other end of the couch with her own mug and turned the radio down low. At some point, I must have sniffed too loudly because she glanced over and asked, "Bad news?" I shook my head. "No, just familiar." She waited. "It wasn't even about the veil," I said finally. "It was what it represented." She gave away something I was never allowed to deserve. Marla didn't offer pity. She nodded once and said, "They always do that to the ones who remember things." The air in the room settled again. I spent the rest of the morning going through the rest of my mail, updating my insurance info, organizing receipts. It felt grounding, like I was patching the seams of my life. That afternoon, I opened my laptop and started drafting a letter, not to my family, but to myself. A contract, a reminder. I do not return to places that ask me to shrink. The words sat on the screen, sharp and real. Whatever came next, I wasn't walking backward. Sunday afternoons used to mean laundry, slow coffee, and watching the neighborhood kids run barefoot on warm pavement. But today, I sat on the couch in Marla's guest house with the blinds half closed, watching my cousin's Instagram live stream. I hadn't planned to look. I truly hadn't. But curiosity is a persistent itch, and I needed to know what my absence looked like to them. So I opened the app, scrolled past sponsored ads and baby announcements, and there it was, Dallin Women Through the Years. The banner spanned the entire backdrop of Isolde's bridal shower, white cursive on soft pink chiffon, surrounded by printed photos, all clipped to string lights like memories hung out to dry. The video panned across each photo: my mother's wedding photo, Isolde's high school graduation, Verity's retirement party. One shot stopped me cold. It was from my 16th birthday. We had a barbecue in the backyard, and I'd been standing in the middle, holding a cupcake. I remember because I had to beg Mom to let me wear the dress I bought with babysitting money. In this version, that center spot belonged to Isolde. My image had been erased, not cropped, edited, as if I had never been there at all. I stared at the screen for a long time before texting Marla. "They erased me." Digitally this time. She replied in less than a minute, "Which means they're scared you still exist." I locked the phone. My fingers trembled, not from sadness, from rage that felt too steady to burn out quickly. I needed air. I stepped outside with a mug of warm water and sat on the porch, listening to the buzz of a nearby lawnmower and the distant bark of a dog. Sacramento's late spring had settled into that golden, lazy warmth that made everything seem softer than it really was. The buzz of my phone pulled me back. A Facebook message request from Ruth Chandler, my grandmother's old neighbor. The message read, "I'm so sorry to hear about your grandmother, hun. I assumed you were there yesterday. She looked peaceful. May she rest." I reread the message 3 times. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I typed, "Wait, what happened?" Then deleted it. What was the point? They hadn't told me. No call, no email, no obituary link, nothing. I walked back inside, locked the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched tight in my lap. My breath caught like something had hooked into my chest and tugged hard. I opened my phone again and scrolled through saved voicemails. There was one, from 4 months ago. Grandma. Her voice, gentle and warm, came through like sunlight through stained glass. "Hi, baby. Just calling to check on you. I know the holidays are weird this year, but I made your favorite. Call me back, okay? I listened to it twice before saving it again. There was no funeral invite because there was never an intention to include me. The woman who held me through every broken ankle, who taught me how to braid my own hair, who slipped $20 bills into my pocket, just in case, was laid to rest without the one person who loved her back in the same way. They didn't just erase me from a photograph. They erased me from goodbye. When the sobs came, I didn't fight them. I let them tear through me like they'd been waiting for weeks to be let out. I curled into myself on that worn-down bed and cried until the sheets were damp and my throat ached. Eventually, I sat back up. The clock on the microwave blinked 3:47 p.m. I wiped my face, stood, and crossed the room to the small desk tucked under the window. There was a manila folder labeled Legal Options where I'd kept insurance info and medical bills. I pulled it open. Among the pages, I found a flyer Marla had given me earlier that week. At the time, I'd brushed it off. Now I unfolded it. Property Inheritance Review, free consultation. I circled the name of the attorney. I wasn't sure where this would lead, but I knew I couldn't let silence bury me the way they buried her. The morning after the bridal shower was unusually quiet in Marla's guest house. Even the birds seemed subdued. I sipped lukewarm tea, scrolling through emails, when a new message from an unfamiliar address appeared. Request for clarification, timeline discrepancy. I blinked. Then I read the name below it. Heath Calder, Isolde's fiancé, or ex-fiancé as I'd soon find out. But before that bomb dropped, something else was brewing across town. Heath had run into Avery Cohen at a networking brunch that morning. They weren't close, just two people in the same orbit of mid-level professionals and community fundraisers. Avery was chatty, casual, recounting highlights from the bridal shower. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "I still can't believe what they did to Linda. Kicking her out right after surgery? That was brutal." Heath's fork paused midair. "Wait, what?" Avery blinked. "You didn't know?" "Oh, I thought you would have, since you're marrying into the family." Heath left early. No dessert, no small talk. By noon, he was calling Verity. She answered with her usual practiced warmth. "Heath, what a lovely surprise. I hope Isolde told you how thrilled we all are." "Why did no one tell me Linda had surgery?" There was a pause. "She didn't want to make a fuss," Verity said smoothly. "You know how dramatic she can be, always wanting to be the center of attention, even in recovery." "She got evicted 3 days after a medical procedure," he replied, voice clipped. "And you thought that was acceptable?" Verity's tone changed instantly. "You have no idea the context here. Linda has always exaggerated. She's been difficult since she was a child." But Heath wasn't new to the Dallin dance. He'd heard the stories, seen the whispers exchanged behind closed doors. What he hadn't seen, until now, was the extent. That evening, he called Marla. She didn't tell him much, only confirmed what he already suspected. "Linda's not a victim, Heath, but she was treated like one, and you know the difference." 24 hours later, Isolde received a single text. "I can't marry into this. I'm sorry." She tried calling, left voicemails, sent long paragraphs filled with half blame, half begging. "What did she tell you?" "This isn't fair. She's manipulating you." But Heath didn't respond. Back at the Dallin house, Verity was livid. She called me while I was folding laundry in Marla's guest room. I let it go to voicemail. Then she tried again. On the third call, I picked up. "Linda," she started, voice tight but rehearsed. "This has gone too far. Whatever you told Heath, whatever twisted version of events you gave him, it's ruined everything." I didn't say anything. "You need to clear the air," she continued. "He's confused, hurt. This doesn't help anyone, least of all Isolde." I took a breath, calm, even. "I didn't tell him anything," I said. Avery did. Funny thing about the truth, it has a way of escaping, even when you lock the doors, she scoffed. So you're just going to sit back and watch us fall apart? You threw me out for centerpieces, Mom. Now sit in your empty aisle. She went quiet. Then the line disconnected. That night, Marla brought out a bottle of champagne she'd been saving. We didn't toast. There were no speeches. She poured a glass, handed it to me, and sat down across the table. I held it for a moment. I didn't toast to their downfall, I said, voice soft. I just stopped drinking to my own erasure. Marla nodded. That's reason enough. Outside, the wind picked up. A gust pushed against the window, rattling the frame like it wanted to come in, but I didn't move. I wasn't running anymore. Tuesday morning came with a soft gray sky and that kind of stillness that feels more like warning than calm. I dressed carefully, dark jeans, a button-up that didn't wrinkle too easily, flats I could walk confidently in. The envelope in my tote bag felt heavier than it was. Inside, highlighted copies of my grandmother's will, dated bank statements, and email printouts, proof I'd never planned on using, but kept anyway. Call it instinct. Call it survival. Verity's text the night before had been brief. Let's put the past behind us. Just family. Come by and talk. If I didn't already know better, I might have believed her. I pulled into the driveway just past 10. The gardenia bush by the front porch looked overwatered and drooping. Ironic, considering how little actual care anything got around here. The front door opened before I knocked. Lowell stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes already averted. Your mother's in the kitchen, he mumbled, stepping aside. The house smelled of citrus cleaner and yesterday's floral arrangements. It tried to mask the tension clinging to every surface, but it wasn't fooling anyone. I followed the sound of clinking glasses to the dining room, where Verity sat at the head of the table, a pen and folder already in place. Isolde sat across from her, unusually silent, scrolling through her phone. Her perfectly straight posture felt forced. Linda, Verity said, standing with arms open like she might attempt a hug. I stayed still. You asked me to come. She gestured to the chair across from her. Let's sit. This won't take long. I slid into the seat, keeping my tote bag close. Verity smiled, practiced and professional. We're refinancing the house. Just a little shuffle, nothing major. The bank needs all named parties on the deed to sign off on the new terms. She pushed a stack of papers toward me. This is just a waiver, standard. Won't change your name on the paperwork, just clears the way for processing. I glanced at the document, then back at her. You want me to give up my share? It's not like you've contributed, Isolde muttered without looking up. Verity shot her a glance but didn't correct her. I reached into my tote, pulled out my folder, and laid it on the table. Quiet, controlled. Inside, proof that I had paid rent for nearly 7 years while living here. Bank transfers made directly to my mother's account. Emails where she promised to reimburse me for pregnancy-related expenses and never did. A printed copy of the will that left the house to all surviving grandchildren in equal share. Isolde stopped scrolling. Verity's smile twitched. Linda, there's no need to escalate this. We're family. No, I said, voice steady. You've made that word mean nothing. She leaned forward. What do you want? Money? An apology? I shook my head. I want you to know that you don't get to rewrite this part. You already erased me from photos. You will not erase me from this deed. I stood, pulled a yellow highlighter from the folder, and dragged it across the line on the will that mattered most. Then I slid the copy across the table. This is mine. You don't get to take it. Not this time. Verity slammed her palm on the table. You're tearing this family apart. I picked up my bag. No, I'm revealing what it already was. Lowell watched from the hallway, still silent. As I reached the front door, Isolde called after me, her voice shaking, not with guilt, but with fury. "You always ruin everything." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The wind outside smelled like dry earth and possibility. I walked to my car without looking back. My legs didn't shake. My gait didn't hesitate. I wasn't limping anymore. Inside the glove compartment, my phone buzzed with a new message from Marla. "You did it?" I replied with a single word. "Yes." Then I drove away, not to escape, but to keep building what they tried to burn. 2 weeks passed, and I didn't realize how quiet healing could sound until it became my daily soundtrack. No slammed doors, no clipped instructions, just the gentle rustle of leaves outside the window and the hum of my old fan turning slow circles above my bed. I woke that morning in my little apartment near 28th and P Street, bathed in the kind of light that felt like a second chance. The walls were still half bare, the rug a thrift store find, but none of that mattered. It was mine. I didn't have to apologize for how I kept it. No one would rearrange my belongings or decide what space I was allowed to occupy. After dressing and feeding the small plant I'd rescued from Marla's porch, some kind of succulent that refused to die, I took my usual walk to the Sunday farmers market. It had become my quiet ritual, 5 blocks, round trip, just enough to get fresh air and feel the city stretch its limbs beside me. Halfway there, near the corner bakery, I spotted a little girl spinning in circles on the sidewalk. Her floral dress flared as she twirled, giggling, while her mom clapped and cheered her on. I stopped, not out of nostalgia, just something deeper. The dress was nearly identical to the one I'd begged to wear when I was 9, the one my mother looked at and said, "That style doesn't suit your figure, Linda." Back then, I didn't know what she meant, but I understood enough to feel small, to feel ashamed. And yet, here was this child, loud, laughing, radiant, and no one told her to shrink. I smiled, not with bitterness. It was the kind of smile that comes when a wound finally turns to scar tissue, still visible, yes, but no longer painful to touch. When I got back to the apartment, my phone was blinking. One missed call, one voicemail. "Dad." I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button longer than necessary. I wasn't sure what I expected. Probably nothing. But curiosity has a way of sneaking back in once the anger cools. His voice was softer than I remembered. "Hey, Linda, it's Dad. I was wrong. I didn't know how to stop her. I should have said something. I hope you're okay." That was it. No apology, no excuse, but also no denial. And in that space, between the lines, I heard something rare. A man who finally saw the role he played in my silence. I didn't call him back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I saved the voicemail. It felt like closure, even if it wasn't redemption. Later that afternoon, Marla stopped by with her usual offering, a paper bag of baked goods and a gallon of sweet tea that was definitely too sweet. She didn't knock, just came in, the way people do when they mean it. We sat on my second-hand couch, legs tucked beneath us, tea sweating on the table between us. The room was quiet, but not heavy, just the right kind of stillness. She glanced around, taking in my framed photos, me and a college friend at Yosemite, a candid shot of me and my grandma in her garden. "You're making a life here," she said. I nodded. I thought I needed a family. Turns out I just needed space to grow. She didn't answer, just reached over and squeezed my hand. As evening rolled in, Marla left with a leftover muffin in hand and a warning to drink water before bed. I locked the door behind her and wandered into the kitchen. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting a warm glow over the modest countertop. I ran my fingers over the edge of the sink, then down to my side. The stitches were gone now, healed, but the scar remained, a faint silver line across my lower belly. It wasn't ugly, it wasn't shameful, it was just there, a quiet reminder of what had been taken and what I'd taken back. Some wounds stay visible, others don't, but both teach you how to protect the skin beneath. I turned off the light, the apartment humming gently behind me, and stepped into the night, knowing exactly what I left behind, and finally, what I was walking toward. Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence, where the deepest wounds aren't from strangers, but from the people who should have protected you. Linda didn't need revenge that shouted, she chose justice that echoed. So let me ask you, have you ever been pushed aside by your own family, only to realize you were never meant to belong? If this story hit close to home, tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories like this one.